We got a new Pope! Yes, I know I'm 2 weeks too late, but it doesn't matter, cause the Catholic Corporation has found a new CEO. Such a job comes with some nice perks, including your very own personal piece of unique transportation, the Popemobile. Welcome everyone to a holy episode 75 of the Automotive History series, where we're going to take a look at the history and practice of blessed mobility. The relationship between a religious leader and an automobile is quite similar to any other world leader. In general, world leaders have their staff cars, usually their own private collection of cars, and the official state car, usually a limousine most likely made by one of the national car makers. For the Pope, it's almost the same. The Vatican has its own fleet for the many cardinals and papal personnel, the Pope has his own personal car, and last but not least, there is the Popemobile. What these cars are kind of depends on the Pope in charge. Sometimes you have a Pope that likes to indulge in his hobbies every once in a while, but then you have a Pope like late Pope Francis, who liked to keep things simple. His daily driver was a Ford Focus. He refused a gifted Lamborghini and sent it straight to an auction. The money was then donated to charity, and one story goes around he preferred public transport over a limousine. Imagine riding on the Roman subway and ask for directions to an old man with a funny hat. So if you think that the Popemobile is the one and only vehicle used by the Pope in the Vatican, then you couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, the Vatican doesn't even like the term Popemobile, but prefers such terms like Papacineto and Veicolo utilizzato dal Santo Padre. We'll get to it later in the video where the term Popemobile came from. And here is another thing where the Pope differs from other world leaders. Whereas world leaders tend to take their official state car with them on international trips, the Pope doesn't. It's not like the Pope uses one and the same Popemobile during his reign for a trip in the Vatican or all over the world. Far from it, in fact. It's common practice that for every trip the Pope makes somewhere into the world, a local car maker is given the pride and job to convert one of the cars into a Popemobile. And so, the list of Popemobiles used since they were invented is quite long. The Italian Wikipedia page alone already lists more than 70 cars used by the Pope. But where did it all start? It shouldn't come as a surprise that before the introduction of the automobile and Popemobile, there were other ways to literally carry around the Pope. The sedia gestatoria, or sedan chair, was the predecessor of the Popemobile, but even then, the Holy Garage was filled with ornate carriages and coaches. You'd think by the time the first cars found their way to Italy, the Pope would then point at them and say, "Prendimene uno." But none of that. Because here is where it gets a bit complicated and delicate, better known as the Roman question. After the fall of Rome in the 1870s in an effort to unify Italy, the Kingdom of Italy took control over the Papal States. Pope Pius IX then reacted by declaring himself as a prisoner of the Vatican, voluntarily refusing to ever leave the Vatican. This imprisonment lasted until the Lateran Treaty of 1929, where the Vatican was recognized as an independent state. But during this time, so from the 1870s until 1929, popes and cardinals were encouraged to not leave the Vatican. Therefore, there was no need for transportation. But that doesn't mean that there were no cars. See, when it comes to cars for the Pope, it's customary to donate a car to the Vatican. It's another great way for advertising for a car maker through this sneaky product placement. The Pope has a set of wheels, and you get a chance to show your car to thousands of people at the event, not to mention that there are about 1.4 billion Catholics in the world. Pretty sizable market demographic, don't you think? edsautoreviews proudly presents Automotive Art Emporium, the official merch store. That's right, over at Eds Emporium, you can find the finest in automotive art made by yours truly. Whether it's a plate you want to hang on your wall in your home or garage, or magnets and stickers that you want to stick on the rear bumper of your classic ride, or expand your wardrobe with some car-themed apparel, I'm sure you're gonna love these designs. All designs are made by me and my own ideas, no AI trickery involved, for classic car owners that can handle a joke, and more designs get added along the way. By buying an artwork, you get to hang something nice on your wall, and I get to work on my retirement plans. So visit your local Automotive Art Emporium by searching for edsautoreviews.dashery.com or click the link in the description and get your awesome automotive art today. With all of this in mind, the first car ever to be donated to the Vatican is the 1909 Itala 20-30. The car was donated by an archbishop from New York City, but to say that this was the very first Popemobile is a matter of perspective. As I explained before, it was a great gift, but one that wasn't used at all by the Pope. It just stood there untouched. More cars would be donated over the years, but all remained untouched because of the Roman question. It wasn't until 1929, with the signing of the Lateran Treaty, that Pope Pius XI decided to break the promise to never leave the Vatican again. And so His Holiness finally embraced the automobile. He celebrated this happy occasion by receiving and driving a Graham Page 837. After the Graham Page, a long list of donated cars followed. To name each and every one of them is a bit exhaustive, but we can certainly look at the highlights. For instance, it's not Italian Fiat, but the German Mercedes-Benz that's the main supplier for the papal cars. Of the some 70 cars, about 14 of them were built by Mercedes, and the Mercedes-Benz Nuremberg 460 Pullman from 1930 is often considered to be the first real Popemobile. Mostly because it wasn't just a standard car that was donated, but because it was specifically modified for the use by the Pope. It was a stretch sedan with silk carpeting and a custom interior. In 1964, during a visit to New York City and 3 years later in Bogota in Colombia, a Lincoln Continental was converted to become a Popemobile, which included a throne-like seat. After Pope Paul VI was done with it, it returned to Lehman Peterson, the company that originally customized the Lincoln, and they decided to put it up for sale. A local and slightly crazy businessman was interested in owning such a unique vehicle and managed to buy it. The story goes he nicknamed it the Popemobile, and thus the nickname was born, but one that wasn't all that appreciated by the Vatican. What most of these vehicles had in common is the complete openness the Pope was exposed to while riding in them. These cars are often called landaulettes or landaules, where the rear part of the roof is removed so that everyone can see and maybe touch the Pope. This comes, as you can imagine, with certain risks. And so, on that fateful May 13th, 1981, it was Pope John Paul II who was shot and wounded by a Turkish hitman while riding in a Fiat 1107 Nuova Campagnola. By the grace of God, the Pope survived, but it certainly was a warning that being so exposed was a serious risk, and something should be done about it. Interesting to note is that the year before, the Pope received a 1980 Mercedes 230G, which did come, in fact, with a transparent box on the back. But this box was made from plexiglass to protect the Pope from such things like wind and rain. But after the attack, it was replaced with a thicker, bulletproof glass, and the rest of the car received armored plating. Besides all of this, both the Mercedes and the Fiat would become the longest-running Popemobiles. But the incident led to the creation of what we now see today as a typical Popemobile. A white vehicle with a big glass box on the back that contains the Pope. It's almost a humorous sight to see. A vehicle with odd proportions and a man placed in a glass box while being looked at by thousands of spectators. It's like some sort of aquarium. But still, it's up to the Pope in charge to choose how much he values his own safety and how much he wants to literally stay in touch with his fan base. Anyway, besides the typical Popemobiles, the list of other cars is also very diverse. The most suitable to unsuitable vehicles have been chosen to be turned into a Popemobile, or were otherwise used to drive the Pope around, ranging from as small as a Seat Panda, which is a rebadged version of the Fiat Panda, to as big as this Star 660 M2. This is not a Popemobile, this is a Pope truck. And then there is this one time the Pope visited the Ferrari factory in Maranello. After visiting the factory, they went to the Fiorano racing circuit. Although the regular Popemobile was ready and waiting for him there, the Pope said nope, as he insisted that he would take a ride in a Ferrari Mondial, which had to be quickly converted to make it possible. I think we have our very first holy car guy here. Nice! In 2004, Mexico donated the very last Volkswagen Beetle, the original one from the 1930s that was still in production in Mexico until the early 2000s. Unfortunately, the Pope accepted the car but never used it, but he did ride around in a golf cart. Whether the Pope enjoys playing a round of golf, well, that remains a mystery. Fast forward to the present day. You might wonder what happens when a Popemobile is retired. Do they simply go to the local papal scrapyard? None of that. Some of the Popemobiles remain in the fleet of the Vatican. Then there are a few cars that get sent to the Vatican Museum and are put on display. Then there are some cars that get sent to private collections or museums elsewhere in the world. And last but not least, you can buy them. No, seriously. Pope Francis used a Fiat 500L during his visit to the United States in 2015. Although it's not a typical Popemobile, it was a mobile that carried the Pope. The car was then up for auction and eventually found its way to a Ford dealership that doesn't even sell Fiats. But, as we all know, Pope Francis passed away on Easter Monday, April the 21st, 2025. As humble he was in his choice of cars, so was his last ride, which was the truck bed of an ordinary short-wheelbase Dodge Ram pickup truck, so short even they had to extend it to be able to carry the casket. A final wish of his is that after the funeral, the pickup will be sent to Gaza and function as a health clinic. And so we have a new Pope, Pope Leo XIV. What the next whip is going to be for Pope Leo remains a mystery. Considering his American background, it would be a dream come true if it's a converted 1959 Cadillac. But I'll let you in on a little secret. Look at the tailpipe of one of the Vatican vehicles and watch closely. If it emits white smoke, we know a new Popemobile is coming our way.